by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne.
Right along here with Ransom Godwin, as always, every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. Revolution Radio, zigzagging through the hour. Thank you for allowing us to come and discuss some of these geopolitical and economic upheavals occurring that are right on track with a repeating cycle in history. If you look out and start to see that the low amount of solar activity happening right now, there's like 2 or 3 sunspots. We're in solar maximum. That is something so strange, so bizarre, so unusual. The crop loss is coming in. China, the peanut crop was wiped out by Typhoon Doksuri. But then this latest hurricane we just had come over Florida, Georgia, southern Georgia, and South Carolina just a day or so ago. That's the lion's share of peanut production for the United States. So now add those two together. If you're going to be doing any prepping out there, you might want to get some peanut butter, as well as India coming out saying that their friends in the BRICS are going to be allotted rice shipments, even though they've embargoed everybody else. But nobody from the West shall receive any rice. So this is the kind of world we're moving into. I can't see systems holding together very much longer. And after talking to Jeff Harmon, he is an astrologer who works with stock traders and those in the markets. And he was saying October 3rd seems to be something gigantic this way come, because when we were discussing together, he's mainly looking from the earth out into the energies from the earth view, if you will. I was looking from the solar view out with the planetary geometry. So coming together with 2 different views of geocentric or not, but the energies or the magnetism or the gravity all seem to show something from October 3rd seems to be the kickoff of it all the way through the beginning of 2025. It looks like whatever shoe you're waiting for to drop or what type of amplification you're looking for, it seems that it starts this October 3rd is really something big that's going to, and I got to find the notes while you're talking there, Ransom, but I do believe he said it's going to be the beginning of a new era. The beginning of a new era. He's like, just relax. It's the shift of the world. We're moving into a new era. So, if anybody's getting out there, months are, precious at this point. So are minutes and hours. So, Ransom, I'm so glad you're joining me tonight. The world has changed in the last week, again, like every single time now. So, I don't know what's on the horizon or the radar that you're seeing that might have an effect on our civilization.
In my opinion, we're about to have a massive kinetic war right before the election, in which they're going to deploy the first waves of AI self-killing drones that both the United States, China, and Russia are all building right now. They're kind of pushing the idea now in different articles around the web right now. They're unveiling the different AI jets that are about to take flight in the skies. And if you remember, I've told you several times, part of the Project for a New American Century, written before 9/11, stated that there were certain goals that the United States wanted to achieve. One of those was controlling low Earth orbit. And I would say that that has been done, not only through Elon Musk's spread of the internet, through the SpaceX/Air Force program, But also you have all types of military and industrial military complex satellites flying around, few of which we even know about. You can look up at the night sky and see some of them, and there's plenty of websites that keep track of satellites, and quite often you'll find several that are not marked. They're not supposed to be there. So that has happened in the past 23 years. Two was that we were going to have a new Pearl Harbor that killed at least 3,000 people, which everybody remembers 2001, in which that occurred, allowing the deep state and the military to invade 7 countries, which I think it's 6 or 5, I forget. They almost completed that one. And one of the main ones was the transition of the armed forces into an AI force. That means at the time, in 1999, they already had the foresight, knowledge of what toys were going to come out of DARPA and the military-industrial complex to set forth a singularity in the world that we can't go back on. Once it rolls out, that'll be the singularity of allowing AI to make the judgment after it gets the okay from its human masters to carry out missions, not unlike the way that we've been carrying out wars recently using man-controlled drones. Now they're going to let it loose to the AI, and that's what's about to happen right before the election. I wouldn't even be surprised if a major war between the United States up front starts happening. According to Zelensky, he does indeed work directly for UN, so the idea of a proxy war is now gone between NATO and Russia. And then we have the situation in the political arena, which I believe I called it exactly, in which I said it was a TV program, that they were making a made-for-TV program drama out of the presidents, at least since, Trump is when they started this information campaign of a made-for-TV politics extravaganza miniseries, and all of the Russia hoax, the whole thing, all of the stuff is tied in together into the next election. And not only are we fighting AI, the idea of AI taking over the markets, food distribution, farming, but also the militaries of the world, and especially the United States, because back to the Project for a New American Century, it was stated and laid out there that the Air Force in the U.S. would be a fully manless Air Force by 2025. Here we are in 2023, and they're putting out the articles left and right about the new toys that the Air Force is about to get to play with, the XQ-58A. There's also another one from a different company, and this one's from Kratos, which is ironic because I called this in 2017. I randomly drove in Colorado Springs up to the Kratos main building there. And I thought, wow, that's really trippy. What is that? The parking lot was just empty. And I rolled into there later to find out that's a major military industrial complex company that provides AI soldiers, microwave weapons, supersonic missiles, anything that you can think of that's unmanned as far as vehicle related. And now the Air Force is going to buy a bunch of these XQ-58 Valkyrie experimental aircraft. And now each pilot from the United States will have multiple wingmen, a flock, if you will, of AI drones. And once unleashed, they can be told to kill, and they will do exactly that. And they can carry long-range missiles. They can, on one tank of gas, its jet-powered engine can go the width of China. It's pretty. We're about to be there. So that's going to be not really a surprise to me. But to the world. And then back here at home, they have a TV made for TV thing. And literally the front page of Drudge is referring to it like a mini series that's going to be televised and streamed so that everybody will have complete attention on this upcoming election and the Trump drama and the Biden drama, not to mention not just Biden, but you got Feinstein, however you want to say it. You got Mitch McConnell and others, these senior crypt keeper politicians that seem to have puppet masters that, the strings are now showing because they're freezing up, forgetting where they're at. It's pretty obvious that someone else is running the show and not the people that they're showing us on the made-for-TV special.
Yeah, it does seem that the planet will get burned down before they allow people to escape on a large fashion of numbers through this programming reality that we're in. And if you do want to take a look at the skies, which not a lot of people do any longer, use the program Stellarium, and that's the one I use. They show all the satellites, comets, planetary movements, different constellations as you move through the evenings in your dark location. Because you brought something up with the Starlink, and I'm going along with all these things. Now, you cannot with a straight face tell me that the internet's going to stay up during these times of different upheavals, whatever is happening. A lot of people moving over to Starlink, and I was, my internet is just off and on, off and on. And it's just terrible now. It's, it's unreliable. So I was thinking I should just ditch the home internet and just go to Starlink exclusively. But now I'm thinking, Ransom, what do you think the percentage of both Starlink staying up 100% while the terrestrial internet goes down completely for months on end? I just really can't believe that Starlink's going to be completely operational at all times while the terrestrial internet has no connectivity. I just, that information blockout's probably going to be pretty complete from the earth, on the ground all the way through the skies. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I think it's something like Google services. Your location history. It may be turned off for us, but mark my words, because Elon Musk partnered with the U.S. government. If any remaining satellites are up in any kind of emergency in the next couple of years, well, that they will have priority in using that, regardless of what the terrestrial internet is doing. The powers that be will have internet and connectivity. What's really weird about this, and I forgot to say that, is at the same time as we're about to put up the AI jets in the sky, we're training right here, U.S. to train Ukrainian pilots on F-16s this October in Arizona, and that'll probably spread out because they're already talking about sending them to San Antonio, Texas, and then they would show up here where I live at Holloman Air Force Base, because that's the main base that we usually train foreign governments to use our stuff. Now, I think it's really ironic if you really think about this. You can see the chess pieces moving when they do things like this. So you were talking about something happening in October. Well, in October, we're training foreign pilots to go bomb a nation that we're just about to be at war with. And that the Russians are not going to see Ukrainian difference, than Americans whenever F-16s start flying into their territory, not only given to them from, other countries in Europe, but when we're training them to fly them. So the combination is basically NATO, the United States. And this is happening in October, which is a perfect reason to declare war or say that we're already at war with Russia, even from their perspective, because that's how they're going to see this. But I think it's really ironic that these giant, massive weapons transfers, not only to the Ukraine, but you remember the $84 billion worth of equipment given over to the Taliban when Sleepy Joe took over. These are some of the biggest weapons transfers in history. But don't forget Benghazi, that was full of surface-to-air missiles and things like that, javelins. This stockpiled at a CIA warehouse because they told everybody that was an embassy, but it actually wasn't an embassy there. So large amounts of weapons have been transferred in the past couple of years in preparation for this World War scenario. And I don't think it's coincidental that the United States is busting out their AI drones. We're talking about swarms. So what you're about to see is something that mankind has never seen before, very similar to World War I, when people first got to look at mechanized warfare and develop shell shock. Well, we're going to have digishock, drone shock, when people are realizing that massive amounts of numbers of people are collateral damage, dying because of drone warfare, in which people are just programming and letting loose these autonomous killing machines. It sounds like we're talking about the Terminator, but we're not. And then also, I like to bring up a good author that used to work, with the Department of Homeland Security. His name is Joel Skousen, and he wrote a book called Strategic Relocation. But he often talks about that some kind of nuclear exchange has already been worked out between us and China in order to start the New World Order actually in the way that they see it. And what they would do is have a small exchange, and then the old fighter jets that are all flying around are going to get taken out by the next level of technology. And I think that's what we're about to see real shortly. Between 23 and 27 is going to be a chapter in history that you could look back on and say that's where it changed. That's where everything went over to AI, not only warfare, but farming and the collection of food, the distribution of food, all forms of currency will be controlled by AI. You have all of these mega companies like Microsoft that are now filing patents for all of their facial recognition so that they can track, trace, and know what everyone's doing in combination with all of these technologies that amount to the same thing as a telepathic connection, but only in a one-way direction where the algorithms, the AI, and the internet can now sense what you are thinking, literally, and share that information with third parties, i.e. the alphabet agencies will know what you're thinking, what you're picturing, what you're anxious about, what you're buying, what you're planning, and they build these databases of all of your metadata and now personality profiles, and you've been profiled, cataloged, and digitized in this new system. And people think it's a joke, but when you look at the financial markets, all signs are saying that they're about to do the major reset. And what better to blame all of these things on, all of these transitions, the food transitions, the monetary transitions, the rewriting of the maps rules for world government, and the destruction of national sovereignty and individual liberty is all going to be swept up. It's been incrementalizing for years, but inevitably any incremental system will come to a singularity, and at the very end you see it exponentially increasing, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Just the craziest of things ever that you've seen out there. Like I saw this story the other day that they're providing special time rooms in Germany for the little kids to go in and explore themselves with adults standing by, just to monitor them for safety. But, the whole world's changing, and it's all going in a dark, twisted direction. I think that because of so many years under the Christian doctrine for the last 2,000 years, they have gone out of their way. It's a lot like the Star Wars plot, in which you got these Sith people infiltrating governments around the world, religious organizations, financial organizations, and then they tarnish the name and destroy them. So first they join them, they co-opt them, and then they burn them to the ground. And you can see this even in the mindset of television, in which, like, especially Generation X, we were bombarded with sales from the different toys companies and the cartoons and the fads and all of that stuff that came out of the 80s, to buy, like Transformers and G.I. Joes and you name it. And each one of these, the leftists, the Marxists, have got a hold of and paid for, bought all of these ideas. And they kill one by one each little hero or icon from that time period, which overall, messes with the moral, sense of what the character's supposed to be. And then on top of that, it really messes with someone's mentality. When what they thought was a hero, they destroy it, they change it, they warp it. And they've systematically done this to every kind of icon and fad that you could uniquely call American, especially. And now, that's what they do. They've infiltrated all of these things and they burn it down. And if you've ever noticed about Hollywood, do you ever see a movie depicting some leftist radical doing something and all of a sudden that movie's selling out at the box office? The answer is no. And there's a reason for that. It's because the people that are I would say, like the Sith side of this analogy, are infiltrated, Hollywood and all these things. And then when they get in there, because they're soulless type people, they don't really represent the people that people can, admire or relate to. And so they have to copy the other people, like the farmers, the ranchers, like movies about rebellion against the British, all of that stuff. They have to copy all of the stuff that the other kind of people do in real life, because they know that that's the only thing that'll sell. And then while they do that, they throw in their little tidbits of programming to morally change it and warp it and dement it. And then this messes with the whole, thought process of an American to want to succeed and feel like they could succeed. But it's not just us. They're doing that in Europe. They're doing that everywhere. So there's a big wave to get you prepared for the changeover. And it's kind of like the art of war. You weaken your enemy first, and then you attack. You don't just go in there when they're at their strongest, whenever they're at their brightest. And that's the same reason that armies, whenever they invade, the first thing that's attacked before the actual invasion is the food source. So if you're going to have a worldwide takeover of a new government, a new system in which you would have to starve out the people that rebel against this idea. And I think that's at the point, and that's going to be your surprise in October, is all-out warfare. But don't forget, they have all of these other cards to play. If something doesn't work out in the public, if their narrative gets exposed, or if it doesn't work out the way, they always got other stuff. We could just pull out more climate stuff. We can pull out, some more riots and protests, little Marxist demonstrations to tear down and further degrade society. Or you could, they can always go with the other cards that they have to play, a financial crisis. Any of these reasons, they can just keep pushing their agendas in the background. And that's exactly what they're doing, except for now, all of the agendas are coming to light, and we're all about to see the transformation to the new world.
Bring out the alien invasion card. That one has not been played yet, but it shall. So to go to Revelation, it does talk about the armies will be at war with each other, but something in the heavens is seen, and then the soldiers fighting to literally just drop their weapons and they just walk home and just stay with their families. Like something of that magnitude is inbound, and that's what I talk about at the end of 2024 in October, is some massive electromagnetic phenomenon is going to be occurring. Now imagine armies are going to war. They've been fighting for 6 months, part of a year or whatever, depending on when it kicks off, and then they start to see dancing plasma ropes in the skies, squattermans up there, you're hearing trumpets and things, space debris coming in, getting a little denser region of space because the magnetic field won't be so intense. So a lot of even what you consider like grains of dust will be making tons of shooting stars. Like all those culminated together, and if there's something massive in the heavens that really happens, like all ancient cultures reference some massive event that was witnessed from everybody across the planet could see it. Like if that level of disruption in what we consider normal electrical fields of our planet, then everybody would drop their weapons and be like, man, this is the end. This is stupid. Countries mean nothing. This whole lie of statism anyway is the biggest lie. In terms of lies that we've been fed since birth, statism has to be the number one, that you belong to a nation. That is the biggest lie. And then maybe central banking after that, or some sort of money. You have to get a job, you have to do this. Okay, so think about in orders of how we're taught on the planet of things that you just take for granted as being, that's just the way it is, so that's normal. So think if there were no countries, and I'm not talking about in this BS utopian kind of communist garbage world, but in some advanced planets that you might see on Star Trek where there are literally no countries. See, that's the whole thing that allows the entire system to continue is statism. And without that bedrock layer of you're different, the border's there, your country, my country, none of these wars through history would have happened. And it just continues. So what's one of the solutions to that? Community-supported agriculture. I really believe we're going to get knocked back to the pioneering lifestyle of the late 1880s after all these events. Even what has occurred in the last year and a half with Russia moving into this larger escalation, even before that, the prognosis during this grand solar minimum was enough tech would be wiped out with the electromagnetic changes enough infrastructure would be broken because the top 2 miles of our crust is starting to move, morph, bend, pull, collapse in on itself, sinkholes, that a lot of complex systems would break down and we'd be coming back to regional systems once again. And that's what, you go back into the 1880s, it was regional systems. So if you can rewind the clock back into an era before everything was wired and completely connected as we understand the world today, if you could wind that back into, there were still basics. We had medicines. We had some, steam compression and devices that, could automate things. We had factories at that point. It wasn't like you had to do everything by hand. It's just they hadn't come up to that full electricity type of thing yet, although light bulbs were already invented and they were experimenting with the current and the electricity back then. So there's going to be a massive financial reset during this time too. And who was I watching? It was Economic Ninja. I don't know if any of you ever seen this guy. He's pretty well-spoken and covers a couple topics each of his videos about the economy. But he's a realtor in California, and he was saying, I watched something this morning of it. It's like, don't buy any automobiles right now. Hold on, just wait a couple months. Because apparently all the auto dealers are just swamping, just drowning in inventory for new cars. So they're going to be either returning inventory back to the factories, or they're just going to start marking them down with drastic price reductions. Because a lot of people don't want to pay 7+% for a car loan either, in addition to a house. So, it does seem that something transitional is right at the tips of our fingers here. And I had a few revelations about why are these things going on with the companies in America? And Ransom, you kind of hit on that there for a minute. If you put products out that people will boycott and then that company will go out of business, that is subtracting the connection from you as an American to an American company. So there's even one less thing that you can associate your nation with, of being that brand is iconically American. Molson, obviously iconically Canadian beer. So if you start to take away all these different companies and suddenly there's only multinationals, then even at that most subliminal level of you associating a product with a nation that you can have allegiance to because you're from that nation is being totally erased right now, company by company. And I looked at that and I said, yeah, you know what? It might take a decade, because the people pushing these buttons to do this, they're playing the long game. And if you trace the money back on these same, aristocratic families, moneyed families, those that have been in control of printing money, monies itself, the same controlling hands have been in control for 4,000 years up to the present day. Like these families that are controlling the wealth, armies, navies of the planets going back, 600, 500 years ago, it's the same families from the same old money from the same countries. So that's not random happenstance. That is a plan that these 13 families or 300 families, whatever you're into on that, they're playing long game. They're not interested in what's happening 6 months on bottom line revenue of some company somewhere. They built those companies from scratch. They'll destroy them and rebuild them again. They're looking at 100-year cycles, like the Chinese. Their plans are 100-year plans. In America, we're stuck with 4 years on a new president. As soon as something comes in and starts working, then it's broken down and reestablished. Like nothing ever really gets done in America except a bunch of circle walking around, because as soon as the next administration comes in, they dismantle everything that was done from the previous administration. So you're starting from scratch. The only thing that stays intact is taxation, more control of allowing, the military to develop whatever it does for protection or offense. And again, the tax-based revenue, that stays the same. But anything that's there to help the populace move forward and enhance or enrich our lives, that just disappears every 4 years. Like you get that microcosm of a breath of something, good happening, and then whoosh, it's gone the very next administration, and then it's whoosh, it's back again, whoosh, it's gone again, whoosh, it's back, whoosh, it's gone. And you just get this pendulum of never-ending nothingness. And that's how a lot of these long-term agendas are accomplished. So if I was going to come up with a plan after World War II and from 1945 and said, you know what, we're going to implement the money system, but it's only going to last for this many years, then we're going to need to break it down and then restart. Well, you would implement that plan out to 2045. And you would adhere to that plan using the same moneyed families, interests, like it is in China. They readjust their 100-year plan every year moving forward. So, this charade that we're allowed to participate in, it's just a charade. Is it a donkey or is it an elephant? It's a charade. Because what's really behind and what the undercurrent of everything, think about your life 25 years ago. If you're younger than 25, maybe use 10 years or something, but go back 20, 30 years in life if you can, and really think about what has changed in terms of us getting more autonomy and having the government have less autonomy or less authority. None. It's the complete opposite. That machine keeps getting more all-encompassing, more all-encroaching, more all-seeing. Whatever candidate's in there, or whatever, face that they put in front, doesn't matter. That whole, steamrolling agenda keeps moving forward incrementally. But I'm seeing the teardown of association with a nationalist product. So what's going to be, if you remove the meats, okay, you're removing all the barbecues, the 4th of July things, Oscar Mayer, whatever it is. So if you can remove meat out of the diet, you can remove that association of Independence Day and these types of things, Memorial Day, etc., for barbecues. And you see, it's incrementally going this direction. And I keep coming back to it. They're not growing enough field crops for the animal feed. That's why they want to have you eat less meat, because if we don't have enough animal feed for fodder, then we can't raise as many animals. That would be cows, pigs, chicken. So of course they're going to discourage you from eating something that can't be raised anyway, because there won't be enough input into it. Now strip away national sovereignty. Oh, we need to go to the UN. Then strip away anything national identity of a product. And it's kind of where we sit right now. Now start a big world war, and then how much stuff could get destroyed in literally a fraction of a second. Half the world's operating systems could be taken and dismantled in 2 weeks. And they wouldn't come back. Whether it be factories or packaging plants, multinational companies that own particular products that have brands that are, iconically this, that, or the other. Well, that company is completely gone. So when it restructures, they're probably not going to have the same products again. See, this is my cue on this is we come into the world war. If we do, I'm hoping the vibration frequency of humanity can stop that. But at the end of it, with all these companies destroyed, do you really think they're going to come back with ultra-nationalistic, identifiable nationalistic products for people to rally around again for that nation? I highly doubt it, man. I highly doubt it. I think everything's going to go that they're trying to erase that nationalist out of products even, let alone brainwashing it out of you in the schools. The only reason I think it really went ultra-nationalist after World War II and into the 1950s is because those school kids, they needed them for the Cold War. And after that Cold War ended, right around the year 2000 or so, the entire schooling system completely changed into this socialist, doctrine that we've moved into now. So, obviously something changed. And what is this next thing? Now they're, getting these kids that have been going 20, 25 years old now that are getting pushed in for the next whatever iteration of change. And none of it's going to be good. And I'll let you respond, Ransom, but this whole thing that I just saw them saying, you owning a house is a bad thing because you not selling your house right now is causing the economy not to do good. You're at fault because you own a house and you won't sell your house and go get a new loan with a new house with a 7.5% interest rate. So if you're holding your house and not selling it, You're the one who's actually causing the economic difficulty in the country. I kid you not, that was out yesterday.
Yeah, you're a bad person for not wanting to be homeless and own your own property and stuff. What's weird is the fact that if you pay attention, they destroy older homes almost as fast as they build new ones, where they keep the same number of homes available. And then, like, if you want to move to someplace nice, like say I wanted to just pick a valley in Colorado and move there, I'm going to pay a lot of money for just a plain piece of land, and there's very limited actual buildings on anything because they hike the property tax way up and the price triples and quadruples after there's a home on it. So in that way, they just keep the number of people that own a home really low, and the further we go into the future, the more banks and companies will own the properties and less private ownership of homes. And then, you got these disasters that keep allowing municipalities and different people to rezone areas, taking back and only letting people with a certain dollar amount own land there. Just for 1 second, though, I wanted to make a correction from last week. We had the word loose up there instead of lose your preps. So, if your preps are loose, they might get lost. And so, it still kind of made sense. But the other thing,
Pack them down, man.
I couldn't for some reason, I was thinking prairie dog, but I kept saying marmoset last week. And I bet everybody was like, why does he keep saying it? Why is he talking about monkeys? I guess if you lived in those other countries around the world that do have the little monkeys, you could eat them just as good as a prairie dog. So, it still applies. That still preps on the go. But for 1 second, though, I wanted to show you some stuff that, is pretty wild. They're telling people now that, vitamins are going to give you cancer. So if you eat vitamins with lots of antioxidants in it, so they're saying that that's bad for you now. So we live in backwards world, and you never know who to believe about what. About all kinds of these stories. It's like the egg argument that they had for decades between the 50s all the way till the 2000s, and when you looked at that, you would trip out because one year they would say eggs are bad, they're bad, and then the next year they would say, well, they're good, and now they have too much cholesterol. Now you're not getting enough cholesterol, so they keep doing the weird thing. So you never know exactly what it is that, according to the authoritative sources, are good for you. And then they're doing this with all of the topics with these misleading ideas. Like here was another one over here that I was looking at. It's completely like you couldn't believe. Like, oh, here it is. Bill Gates funds scheme to chop and bury trees so that we could fight climate change, because those evil trees, they put out all this carbon dioxide, right? And all of these little programs, people don't see it, but it's all aimed for one outcome, and that is the replacement of humans in the workforce. Right here, what we were talking about earlier is in the military context of how they would be replacing manned flight with AI. And here's an article also: AI humanoid pilot might be able to solve the pilot shortage. So think about this real deep and hard for a minute. Say a pilot has a heart attack or a stroke or something like that incapacitates him. Don't worry about it. We don't have to put your life in danger in the hands of a human being. We can have AI pilots, AI taxi drivers, AI everything, because we're at that point. Here's another one. Apple tests using 3D printers to make devices in major manufacturing shift. Now, one might think, oh, wow, everything's about to get cheaper and better. No, it's not. It's going to cost the same. The only difference is they're putting people out of work. Just like the, turn minimum wage into $17, people. Congratulations. Now you can't buy anything for $17. Here's another one that really puts it in perspective, and it's the one I was talking about earlier. Microsoft, for their face tracking patent. That means anything that you're using on a computer. You know that Bill Gates, the same guy that wants to bury trees to save the planet, the same guy that wants to block the sun, the same guy that wants to help you in case you catch any bug out there or something, the same people. It's the same characters in all of these arenas. So, are you ready to hand over everything to these guys? And then at the same time, why are they pushing the idea of all these facial recognition, the universal coin, if you want to call it that, or whatever, that's eventually whatever the last one is going to be? It's because whenever they do stuff like this, they want you to participate, and they don't want to know what you think about it or whether or not you want to comply or not. So we could look to the future for environmental hazards that cause lockdowns. And anytime you hear this word lockdown or 15-minute city or any of these things, I want you to think about natural disasters and how they unfold. Here's one from AccuWeather. Idalia turns deadly, wreaks havoc on Florida to the Carolinas. I looked at the map this morning. There was 300,000 people out of power. It's down to about like 91. But the videos are just crazy. And this is nothing new. The U.S. has been dealing with this since we've been a country, yet every single time a hurricane or some kind of natural disaster rolls through, people are beating you over the head with climate change. They want you to realize that you, the human being, are a problem. And the more and more, the articles and the news and the overall understanding of the situation around the world is starting to come into alignment. So about the point that the media can no longer tell you a different story and tell you that your lying eyes are deceiving you, they'll go ahead and admit it and act like they've been telling you that the whole time. Look, here's the Washington Post here. Families crossing U.S. border illegally reached all-time high in August. But at the same time, they're saying, no, it's totally sealed up, and don't worry about it. Don't worry about. Mexico says no way, so they're not going to allow the U.S. to send military in to fight the cartels. But I think that this is going to change, and it may be because of some kind of incident along the border, which I've been predicting for some time. And I keep seeing repeating articles like 61% of Americans aren't buying, what they're not buying food, and they're not buying these other things because they're worried they're not going to have food to pay their. I mean, that's funny, food to pay their bills. They're not going to have money to pay their bills. And then you see the same article written over about France, where they're telling people, the spending is stopping. People are only buying stuff to prepare. Now, I get it. France is further into this cycle than we are, as if you've been paying attention to them. They're completely further in than we are. But it's not just us. China is about to have the same problem that all of these other nations are, and that's some kind of economic crash. So China, you were talking about earlier, they plan in 100 years. But sometimes the planners planning get the plans wrong, and they misinterpret the data they think they're getting. So they estimated that they'd have a specific population at a specific time, being now, but they really poorly understated their one-child policy. So they're about 100 million people short, and the people that they have are not the youngest of people. So China, if you are a company, let's say China is a company, and we know that the communists think a lot like a heartless company, because indeed that is communism. The merger of the state and the government and the corporations is communism. It's also fascism, which is what you technically have in the U.S. It's the same system with a different face, and they're about to consolidate these because they have a problem. The problem is people. It's not really a problem, but the problem is that they can't have all of those people disagreeing with their plans for the future of our planet. And this is the pivotal point of the Great Reset, is to reset everything from human beings to technology to the way that you view history and the earth. It's all being reset. From religions to, the whole idea of what a family is, a tribe is, a culture is. They're trying to destroy all that to remake it, but they have to get rid of all of these people everywhere. And all of the people that have been involved in world government, because if you really look what they're doing behind the scenes, you'll see that China and NATO have been systematically stripping resources from around the planet and at the same time destroying national sovereignty, what seemingly is in cahoots. And then all of these environmental rules that are put on industrialized countries so that they can't compete with China until China gets ready for their great reset, and they're going to have one too. They have to do something, and why not get involved in a kinetic war with a bunch of AI that kills a lot of collateral damage. And that is literally what we're going to see. There's no more future movies about it where they're going to let humans see it, and it's already happening. It's just that we don't live in the battlefields to know it. But since the early 90s, they've been perfecting these programs, first with men flying the drones, but now the AI are sophisticated enough at this point that they're about to let it loose. And it's so ironic that they just keep pushing the predictive programming, and it makes you wonder if you just sit down and watch every movie right now, are you just going to see all of that stuff in 3 years? The problem is that Hollywood's behind on the times, and now they're trying to show you future stuff that's today. All the facial recognition, all of that future tracking, tracing, Orwellian stuff is already a reality, and now they're about to unleash the bots not only in the workforce but in governmental roles as deciding. And they've already been doing this. You can look up Watson. That's the computer named after the guy that made the Nazi computer that cataloged the Jews. They named a computer after him, and that's the one that decides if vets are going to get health care or not, or they're going to be left out because the government doesn't want to pay for whatever it is they need. So we're at that time. Any of those future movies.
Ransom, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you're saying, that we're seeing now what we saw in Hollywood with the facial recognition and the autonomy of all these things. How many years ago do you think that was in the movies that we saw that? And compared to now, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years ago is when those movies were out, or when do you remember seeing stuff like that in the movies?
70s at least. What's the one? There's several of really good sci-fi movies from back then that had a really good handle on the future. Not just 1984, which is scary about, all of its stuff there. Freedom is slavery, and truth is lies, and the whole bit. It's all war is peace, right? The former peace party, that everybody would claim that they were peace guys, like Kerry and all of those guys acting like, I was out in the streets protesting the war. Those are the same people that want to blow up the world now. So it's been at least from the 70s, but it's been incremental, and they've been leaking more and more of the truth. But what's weird is, like I said, it's come into alignment now. So the futuristic things that they're telling have run out of storytelling because all of it's real now. It's not surprising to us. And now we've been incrementalized for long enough to accept these things as just the natural, path that humans were going to take, the natural evolution. And, for all those people that really want disclosure, do you really want that? Because what does that really actually mean? If we were going to make a deal with any other extraterrestrial empire or, government, they wouldn't want to deal with just one part of our planet. They would need the whole planet to be one faction, or they wouldn't be able to deal with us because it would cause, all kinds of internal problems. And if we were merging our government system, we'd have to have a one world government. There's no doubt about that. So all those people that think that, the aliens are going to come save us, all of these scenarios end in the same thing. How fictional some of them are, how fantastic they are. I think that they, really think that they made everybody think they were all fantastical and they were all fictional until here we are. There's drones in the skies. We're about to have robot wars. You are never away from your Android or your little robot that you carry in your pocket. I would say that 70% of the population right now, at least that's awake, is staring into their phone. And I'm not hating on the people that are listening to our show in it. But it has reached an epidemic where, like, I go outside and I'm driving around. I almost hit 4 or 5 people that have walked in the street because they're looking at their robot to give them directions, not only on who to pick politically, what the latest trends are, what health information they need, or what medicine that they should take or not take. And I get a giggle every time I turn on antenna TV because like 30% of every hour is some kind of pharmaceutical commercial that tells you, hey, you want to see? Take this. You might go blind. That's one of the side effects, but take it. You're tired of having diarrhea? Take this medicine. Side effects are diarrhea, upset stomach, nausea, and constipation. I don't know. It's just we live in such a backwards world that everything literally is probably not the way it is. And in fact, we've got to the point where as soon as someone from authoritative sources tell you something, you should immediately think that it's probably backwards. Do your own research, figure it out. And especially if it's scientific, we still live in that little golden age remnants where you can still look up stuff and the way it was and how to do things in books for the time being. That is until books are deemed dangerous. And you notice how the right-left uniparty takes little things and makes it theirs. So like you got the right side wanting to ban books. You got the left side pushing books that shouldn't be where they're at so that there's an argument. And this is done time and time again, where a government will cause a civil argument. And you can take the Civil War, for example. They made it sound like it was about slavery. It was about human rights and all this. But actually all it really was the Union deciding whether or not the federal government was going to outweigh states' rights. And it was a coup of the federal government over the states' rights system. And since then, they've been arguing that they have it, but they don't really. The federal government took over that. And now we're at the next stage, the world government. So we need some kind of intercontinental, international world war so that they could finally, once and for all, put people in their place and say, in order to have peace, you must accept our security. And our security is that every last single animal and human being on the planet must be tracked and traced for the safety of all.
Oh, you should be an advertiser for the United Nations. Because if the UN didn't work to keep peace, then what would a world government work to keep peace? See, that's just the simplest of questions. Disinformation or whatever. You're penalized on your credit score. So I wanted to say something about maps, like people looking where they're going on their phones and maps and books. Lonely Planet, for all the views out there that used to travel back in the day, Lonely Planet. Like they had the maps in the book. You had to really learn how to read maps. And, there were paper maps everywhere you went. Or you could always pick up a paper map. So I got really good at reading maps. Super good, man. Even today, when I pull a map out, or if I can find a map somewhere and they'll be on their phone and I'll have a paper map and they'll get lost and I'll go, oh, we're following the sun going west on this street. They're just blown away. Like, how do you even know how to read that? I mean, give me that thing. And then they unfold the whole thing and I'm like, dude, I was in that square in our little quadrant within a kilometer of either direction, right in the middle there, and you unfolded the whole map. Dude, really? Like, what's going on? But those kind of skills of even being able to read a paper map without the electronics, and who knows how to use a compass and a sundial these days. Actually, one thing I bought just a couple weeks ago was a compass with a sundial on it, attached to it. It's on the front cover and it folds up. But having those rudimentary things that are running off of the Earth's magnetic field or the sun itself, so you can actually see the light to tell you what time it is, provided your device is pointed northward. But think about all these things that are just so basic to bring us back, and how humanity right now, literally, they wouldn't know how to use the paper map, run the compass, or have any kind of solar clock, any type of something like that. Most people would not be able to set it or use that sort of thing. Sundial, if you give it to them and you say, all right, this is a sundial, tells you the time using the sun, and if you really did lose your electronics and you don't know what time it was, or you can't cheat and look at your watch like Crocodile Dundee, if they had to go out and set that thing up, I mean, 90+%, no more, 95% at least would just look at you with a blank stare and go, what are you, dude? Dude, what are you smoking? I need some of that. Pass some over, because you're giving me this thing that stands up and, we want me to tell the time with the sun. Come on, man. That kind of, or even to read a map. Okay, we don't have any more, the satellites are down for a bit. There's no more Google Map. You got to do everything paper map wise, which is another thing. How many of you have bug out maps in your cars of the local counties around you, of county maps? not the regular big one you can get from AAA of the whole state. Obviously, that shows you the biggest thoroughfares. But how about a county map so you can really take your way through the back roads if you need to get around somewhere? Like, you don't know, you could be one county away that you're not so familiar with, but you just need to get back into where you're at, local, and closer back to your city or town or highway or something.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, ITM Trading is a precious metals company that has been in business for over 27 plus years with a mission to educate and empower individuals to hedge against inflation, mitigate financial risk, and prepare for the Great Reset. ITM Trading has spent the more than 27 years developing a team of expert researchers and gold and silver analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn. Your journey starts with a strategy that will educate and empower you to thrive during the current economic crisis. These resources have been developed for the sole purpose of equipping you with the knowledge you deserve regarding the truth of our volatile finances. ITM Trading was born out of our founder, Craig Griffin's principle that it takes more work to be honest and to educate people, but it's the right way to do business. Over 27 plus years, and still we are family-led. By leaning into Craig's words and prioritizing relationships over transactions, we've continued evolving. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call. Dial the digits 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422.
You have a choice in today's unstable world. Eat Z-Bugs or plan ahead. Eat Z-Bugs or buy the storable foods. When a disaster strikes, we may find ourselves confined to our homes or shelters for days or weeks. In such situations, having a supply of nutritious, non-perishable, and easy-to-prepare food is vital. So what essential foods should we include in our emergency survival food kit? Let's explore some key items that are not only non-perishable, but also wholesome and easy to prepare. Dried fruits are an excellent addition to your emergency food supply. They are lightweight, compact, and provide a natural sweetness and energy boost. Energy bars are compact, portable, and nutritious. They are a convenient on-the-go snack and provide an instant energy boost when needed. By incorporating these additional items, your emergency survival food kit becomes even more comprehensive and capable of sustaining you and your family during extended periods of disruption. Having a well-prepared emergency food supply can make a significant difference in natural disasters or unexpected emergencies. It provides reassurance and a sense of control, knowing that you and your loved ones have the necessary sustenance to endure challenging circumstances. Beyond the tangible benefits, building an emergency food kit is an act of responsible citizenship. By taking personal preparedness seriously, we reduce the burden on emergency services and relief organizations, allowing them to focus their efforts on those in dire need of assistance. Investing time and thought into creating your emergency food supply is a proactive step towards safeguarding your well-being, and your family. With the right food supplies, you can maintain your physical and mental well-being and face any unforeseen event with resilience and strength. HeavensHarvest.com. Use promo code ADAPT and save 15% at checkout. Don't be forced to eat Z-bugs.
Before the break, we were talking about just the basic rudimentaries that you might need for prepping. Communications is going to be one also. And you got to think about having some maps in your car, a compass, maybe a sundial for something more at your house so you can know what the time is. But the skill of being able to read the maps and, communications as well is going to be something super, super important. And the reason I bring it up, because if you could have listened to our show, if something really went down and we had access to like either Starlink or some other kind of internet communications where we could bring you updates, that's exactly what we would do. It'd be more of a live news broadcast with the information mixed in of some of these very same things we talk about. So Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us present this. And if you all think free speech is something you want to hold on to, consider a donation here to keep this station up and running, especially Studio A, Studio B, and all the different shows and hosts and ideas and thoughts for us to get ready. It's as rare as a blue supermoon to find a site that will host and then also, just no swearing, but whatever you want to say, cool. Very few of those left, very few. Just lucky that we're here to be able to share our thoughts. Like here's another one you probably won't hear about for another day or two. And see, this is what gets me. Ransom, if you go to spaceweather.com, and anybody else out there who's following tonight, just put in your browser, spaceweather.com, and then look to see what's up in space. And I love right at the top, they have an AI-free zone. Every article written is written by a human. That's what they're saying. We guarantee this is all human-written stuff. So again, there's going to be, people are going to seek out these AI-free zones, if you will. It's a great way to put it. Because people are always going to have, human-created art, human-created text, speech, written, that came from a thought from a human, of a deep thought, not an AI. So anyway, there's an Earth-directed CME coming in, and it should be here on September 2nd. They say it's a very faint halo CME, but you have to realize those are pretty intense when you get a halo CME. It doesn't, it's coming directly at us is what that one means. Is this, a lot of times you see it and it'll go off to the side, but when you see it and it has this halo that rolls over, and you can see it as a circle around the sun coming directly at you. See, that's a lot of stuff of the petroglyphs off the canyon walls. Now just, amplify that, go 100x up. And for sure you'd see that with the human naked eye coming in, like the skies would get really bright and there'd be a lot of, electrical storms and kind of crazy things happening. And, just shapes in the atmosphere would appear and lightning, and it would just be weird. And you could see that with your eyes. Now put it to an X1000. Or X500, and you can very clearly see why those, like Chaco Canyon, that has that glyph of that halo CME coming toward our Earth. Like they got it, they understood it. That's what that circle with all the dots is, the observer looking at the sun. That's what they were describing. Well, there's a small one of those inbound, and our Earth's magnetic field is super, super weak anyway. So here's the thing with earthquakes, they always downgrade them. Seismicity reports, if it was a 7, they'll downgrade it consistently to 6.9 or 6.8 to get it out of that 7 range. What's the same thing with this? I know where solar maximums or magnetic fields are a little bit stronger, but just the overall intensity of the sun is down. So overall, the magnetic field of the planet's not as strong as it used to be comparatively. But so a CME coming at us, a halo CME, they say it's going to be a G1. But here's what I'm seeing also. I'm noticing a correlation here. So the space weather forecast, they might put it as a G1, but I bet it's going to rock in at like a G3 or something bigger, much bigger. Just like they downgrade the quakes, they downgrade the solar forecast intensity from whatever's happening on the sun. Because if you were to see the same thing, like if you looked at seismicity reports and you can see the the earthquake reports before the downgrades, it shows a severe and very easily clean seen uptrend in the larger quakes at the 6, 7, 8 ranges. But if you downgrade everything, they can smooth that to make it look like it's not as intense. Well, it's the same thing happening here. You could follow the upgrade in the sun's activity and the effects on our weakening magnetosphere and also our magnetic field here on the planet, better term if you'd like to use that one, of G1, G2, 3 storms and the effects they would have and how far down we see aurora. So they're going to say, oh, this, excuse me, they're going to say this is almost going to be a nothing burger on a halo CME, which is so rare that you get those anyway. They're really rare. You get a full halo CME coming directly at the Earth. Man, that's rare. That hardly ever happens. You get glancing blows left, right, and center. There's halos off the backside of the sun, but rarely does it come directly at us, fully encompassing like this. But don't worry, it's only going to be a G1. And Ransom, I hope you were able to get space weather up, because there's a few movies. If you go there, Canyon of Fire was actually, it shows something that looks like a hydro flare ripping off that created a canyon-esque, looks like an S, like a snake slithering across the face of the sun there. And if you look at it, it looks like LASCO because it's the blue frame. So you're looking at LASCO C2 on this one on the satellite view, and that'll be from the 30th and the 31st. They show the halo coming off, and it definitely faint, but for sure coming directly at us. So what does that tell you? Well, in the disinformation campaign, the IPCC would have deemed this as misinformation that the sun could affect the Earth's systems and waves, and we can get northern lights and aurora from the sun, but that same sun won't affect any clouds or anything on the planet, man. We live in such a bizarro world. Ransom, like you said before the break, everything's literally 180 degrees of where it should be in terms of reality. Hey, Ransom, you there?
It is, and I was showing this the front page of Drudge there. So
yeah, all right, Ransom, I dropped off somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But yeah, keep going on Drudge. So Ransom, before I dropped off, I was trying to get everybody to go over to spaceweather.com. Did you get over there?
Yeah, I got it there now. Let me see here. I'll put that up again.
Yeah, I must have dropped off sometime because I was saying that the USGS downgrades earthquakes a lot, but these space weather forecasts seem to downgrade the intensity of the geomagnetic storms coming toward the Earth. Because if you get suddenly at an uptick, everything's G3 and above, or whatever, you're like, whoa, that's a slight increase. But everything's got to be G1. You got a full halo coming at the Earth, which is super rare anyway. And then suddenly it's like, oh, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. I wonder what kind of aurora this is going to spark, man. That's going to, because see, the way this is going to hit, it's going to be from the North Pole to the South Pole. It's going to be, because our planet usually gets some kind of glancing blow. But this thing's coming straight at us, and it's going to encompass and surround. It's going to be an interesting one. So keep you all eyes at the September 2nd, huh? That was it, man. I'm done.
Yeah, you know that they wouldn't tell us if it was something super dangerous, at least from the government perspective. You would have to figure that out as someone that watches all this stuff and then anticipate the moment they cut off the data on you. You ever notice that sometimes it's really delayed at certain websites? Like if you look at the more government-sided ones, they'll leave the data off for a while. Like they want to make sure that nothing's actually going to happen. before they go ahead and do it. But yeah, that does look exactly like a coiled snake. It looks like a fake image. The canyon of
look
fire.
At this. These Halo CMEs. I mean, you're witnessing something special here, because it's so unusual that a full Halo CME will come directly at the Earth. That's just kind of really rare, So I can't imagine that it being a G1 only geomagnetic storm. That makes zero sense. Like, really makes no sense.
Actually, it's always surprised me ever since I've been watching these things that, most of these seem to pop off right before the sun turns around to be Earth facing. It's almost as if somebody's like looking out for us in a cosmic way, because a lot of those that I've seen since I've been alive would have killed almost everything on one side of the Earth if it had, popped off in our direction. We get little weak ones like this all the time, but you ever wonder if there was some way to predict this, because that they cause radio blackouts sometimes in different portions of the world, that would be perfect opportunity to carry out, certain things, because there's a time delay from seeing this, and then when the material gets here, that you could plan out any kind of op or something at that time period. Because there would be radio blackout in areas that would be able to say stuff. And it kind of makes me wonder if they are assuming that this is going to happen at a large scale, because ever since I've been looking at the Elon Musk SpaceX type stuff, I realized that it is the future. It's throwaway technology. These are really small satellites that are easy to reproduce and put up in large amounts. So even if we did have a devastating, geomagnetic storm hit the Earth and it knocked out all of these older big satellites, in a month or two, people could put up smaller ones again, which would, put up internet for certain people, like we were talking about before. Whether or not they let terrestrial internet happen, I don't know. But think about I don't know if it's last year or early this year, one really small geomagnetic storm hit, and it dropped like 40 of those SpaceX satellites. Came burning down to the Earth because they're at a really low Earth orbit. And they have convinced everyone on the planet that, if a Carrington or larger type event actually came across the Earth's way, that it would knock us back into the Stone Age. And I somewhat disagree with that. It will knock large populations of peasants and poor people, according to the elites back in the Stone Age. But there are continuity of government plans and easily fixable things that they could be up and running within months. But that would be, the powers that be. And they've kind of shown that everything's going in this throwaway type of AI control, really small. Everybody thinks big, but we're not back there in the 50s and the 60s, even though they would like you to think that we are, as far as technology that takes us into the outer realms out of our planet there. Because obviously Elon Musk has been proving that with a little bit of AI controlled power, you could take the old Wernher von Braun technology, and it's a force multiplier, which changes the whole technology. So now you can control each individual rocket, allowing it to be reused. And, if you remember the old UFO stuff from back in the 50s, they always kind of showed this flying saucer with some thrusters under it that would land on the 3 little landing pads or the 4 little landing pads. And that's what we're seeing now. It's the Elon Musk stuff that they're showing is basically Wernher von Braun stuff, all the stuff he came up with, but with the technological twist on it. And it shows you that they really don't want us to get out into space as far as human beings. And I don't even see private corporations really getting a good look into deep space for some time. However, they are mass producing the stuff that's pointed inward, meaning like all of the stuff to track and trace. So it tells you where they're going with it, and it isn't outward, it's inward. We have a giant spy device, just like Musk said. I'm not blaming Musk because he's not the only billionaire or NGO or international tech company or government that's putting these type of things up into the atmosphere and using all of this stuff. He's just a good public example. He's kind of like the made-for-TV Tony Stark Iron Man version, except for he doesn't fly around in a suit, but he is sending rockets up and he is putting a lot of satellites. And according to even him, we're going to be connected directly via brain implant. Even according to him, there will be no dead spots on this planet, meaning that they have a idea that they're going to keep putting these things up nonstop. And now that they're more disposable, you could totally see the breakaway civilization living right here on the Earth, even with the other people that have been knocked down with their economics taken away, their free will taken away about where they want to go. It's so attractive. But in order to do any of these plans, they have to reduce the population by a major factor. And we're already at the population plateau. So if you've been studying the population of Earth, even though they've been telling you it's overpopulated and it's just going to skyrocket into the future, the truth is right around 8 billion people is where they knew it would plateau. And the reason for this is because the number of deaths versus the number of births, the amount of older people in the population, the amount of sterile people, and all of those things aren't even put into this formula. So they were just talking based on the age of the people in the planet worldwide, that there would be a massive population reduction following the plateau. And then, so what better time to do the reset when it's already happening? You just kind of ride the back of this natural curve of depopulation and introduce things in it. And as Bill Gates said, certain things that he sells will help with population reduction, not to mention the other programs, they got going on. And these are just the public ones. Does that ever scare you, David, knowing that the crazy things that you see today are probably old technologies? But not only that, that's just what they're letting you see. And that there's a whole nother level of things above the presidents, above the single governments of the planet, into the black budget military industrial complex world that we know nothing about. They are making programs and they have things that are just unimaginable. And imagine the plans that those people have compared to just the ones that they allow us to publicly see with a couple of lowly billionaires.
Yeah, it's impressive, isn't it, with the tech? Because okay, let's go tech and housing, but they kind of go down the same line here. So with that, back to the housing again, I've written this note, and when you were talking, last hour, I wrote a note. With BlackRock buying all these different homes right now, and those out there, at least on some of the government media and the economic arenas, are saying that because you own your home and you won't sell it now and turn it over to somebody else and try to make that money move and increase the velocity of money, you're causing a lockup in the economy. Well, people who are losing their homes or are selling some, they're not individuals going to rebuy them again. It's mainly just institutional buyers, and I'll use BlackRock as one. But it comes into the interesting theory here of bringing us back to serfdom one step at a time means if you're not going to be able to own a home, you're going to have to rent a home. So they're not going to just grab everybody's home because people will be like, you're not taking me out of my house. But as we're moving to the next step, what you can see is everything once sold will be bought by a company. It won't be transferred to an individual. And then from that step, it'll be everything across the planet will be rentals. Nobody will own property at that point. You really won't own anything. You'll just be a renter. And the dangers that comes with that is the person renting you the house in the contract can say, this is a no meat household. You cannot cook any meat. If there are, we have meat sensors in here. If you cook meat in the house, then you've broken your lease and we shall return your whatever, and then you're kicked out of the house. But then I'm sure by that point they'll have some sort of social credit score associated with it. So then you won't be able to rent another house because you broke that no meat. I could see no smoking in a house. Okay. But what if that no alcohol consumption in the house? Like if you're going to rent the house, no meat and no alcohol in that house at all. And sensors everywhere. And then they could really push it on. Oh, you said something political. You broke the lease agreement. And this is where I think the serfdom comes back in again, where the kings are going to own or try to own, and you shall just live and work and pay your grain as taxes to the king for your sharehold. I can see the de-evolution of that, which brings us back into the same cycle, which occurred. Where would that bring us back to in terms of if we're going to rerun a cycle again, probably around 1100 AD? Think about that, because you got to go back to what you consider serfdom after the monks and this sort of thing come in Dark Ages. That would put us around 1100 AD. If this spills out and rolls for another 30 years, not even 20 years, the way it's going, yeah, almost all corporations will own almost every single property on this planet. And every time you sell, perhaps the law will be passed. Well, every time you sell, it can only go to a company. Nobody can buy it again. But you can sell it and get the money for it eventually, which will probably be part of the new central bank digital currency system. They would be selling into CBDCs, which could also be controlled based on your speech or your habits or your consumption. But no, you can't spend it on that. But if it comes all the way back down again, yeah, let's say we go out 30 years, let's take it to 2050. And then the clock starts again to be 1100 AD in 2050. And then they run the same cycle again for 900 years. By that time, man, the planet would change so greatly in 900 years. Even 500 years, you wouldn't even recognize this place. In terms of just like how many forests would regrow back with a smaller population, geomagnetic shifts, larger earthquake, who knows, volcanism, a million things could happen. And then the whole story is repeated. But you know what? At the same time, they've kept all their tech as well during these resets. These same moneyed families that have been in control for 4,000 or 5,000 years, obviously, they have more information about the cycles that disrupt the Earth's systems and terrestrial systems, hydrological cycles being one big one, and then the temperature cycles, and the planting and the harvesting dates. Well, if you knew these cycles were inbound, you just wouldn't tell the rest of the planet. You keep it as your own little family secret there. And what if there's really only a group or just only a handful of families, hundreds of families that know this information that, okay, the cycle comes back again? Well, we're going to have to repeat the entire thing. For 4,000 years, if you had that advanced information, you would keep the tech, just like you said, Ransom. You're going to take it underground. You're going to protect it. You're going to put it wherever you need to take it to protect it. And then pop out of the ground, how many years later do you think it would be? 100 years later, 50 years later? The aristocracy's back. Oh, they're setting up all the systems. We're serfs now. It's a brand new world. We just have to eke the land out for an existence. Well, they're popping out with AI already. And you're going back into wearing some burlap sack that you like a hand cut yourself. Like, come on. I don't know, man. You sparked a lot of thoughts in that last bit of conversation there.
Well, it's funny that, we got this guy talking about Bidenomics every 2 minutes, but when you look through the actual financial type articles and stuff, you see here's one: customer confidence craters in August, according to Shift Gold. We are seeing a non-spending tsunami. Largest French retailer warns consumers forced to make massive spending cuts on essentials, maybe like meat, maybe like heating and cooling in their homes and stuff like that. I don't know. You remember that was happening for years already now, and they've gotten everybody used to it. They've incrementalized living in a worldwide recession, basically. And, they tell you that the yellow liquid that's dripping down your face is not what it is, at the same time as saying, don't worry about it. Here, 61% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Inflation still squeezing budgets. Not only that, record number of people are expanding their credit limit. Record number of people are in credit debt that they haven't been in before. And we're not talking about I have some credit debt, but it's small. I talk to other people that have nicer houses and nicer cars and stuff. And then, I'm thinking, oh, well, they're living the good life. And then I find out, well, they're talking about how much debt they're in. And I'm like, oh, Okay, well, I guess I'm not in debt at all then. After hearing some of the numbers from people that are upper middle class and maybe a little more talking about the debt that they're in order to live the lifestyle that they're living, which means that it's all going to crash down at some point. And here's another one. Poor Americans skip meals, can't afford power bills, miss rent payments. There's more people out on the street. And by the way,
Yes.
this is something I personally know for a fact, at least where I live, there is an increasing number of homeless people and people living in RVs. And it's everywhere. I look outside, and I do live next to a truck stop. So I see more of it now that they built a truck stop next to my home. I used to live kind of remote, but now I'm not so remote.
Yeah,
But
Ransom, how many trucks are there? Because we talked last a couple weeks ago. How many trucks are there now compared to the last time you gave me an update? More or less for the RVs?
It's actually full, and I'm not sure if it's different every night. I look over there one night and it's empty. Like, let me see here. I got a camera.
Yeah, you said there's a bunch of people over there that were staying there a long time that had dogs and stuff. And you said, that'll probably increase. I think I can't remember how many there were, 6, 7, 8 of them like that. And
yeah, that's right. And they didn't leave. They're not out there right now. I've been driving around town, and I've been realizing they just find new places to park. They park there for a little while until someone complains or they think they've wore out their welcome in that spot, and then they move to another spot. So it's like a rotating carnival, basically. And it's no offense to them, but I have the same size RV as one of them that I was watching that had like 13 people in it. They kept piling out with their dogs, and I'm like, wow, all of you guys live in there with your dogs. And I'm thinking, I have the same size RV, but I was only intending on like me and my family, a small family. I can't even imagine. It didn't seem like there'd be enough room in there, but this is increasing. So I'm seeing it everywhere. There's tent cities popping up right behind where all the businesses are in the desert. And so obviously you would think that with less people out there and people that are losing their financial stability and they're getting kicked out of these homes, that there would be more housing available for other people, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Instead, housing it's too expensive. So we're going to be seeing more and more of this, and it's Bidenomics, truly is. But they've been doing this for a long time. This is the depreciation of your money and lifestyle that they told you were going to get used to. And then, you know what? If you talk out about it, you could be debanked. Debanking the latest assault on freedom of speech from the Mises Wire, talking about people that say what we're saying basically are at risk to have their financial services yanked out from underneath them if those companies got wind or were offended by what you're saying or whatever. But don't worry, because here's another one from Shift Gold. Now keep in mind he is Shift Gold, but gold, natural money versus fiat money that is fake. Now it doesn't have to be gold. It could be blocks of products that you've created out of the land that you still own because you're a bad person and you want to own your home and live on your own land and have privacy and individual rights and stuff. But keep that in mind. And then, more and more every week we tell you that more and more countries and financial services are moving over to the BRICS system. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Iran, and now we're starting to have big players. Right? United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, that's a lot of money. Argentina, Ethiopia, not so much. But the other countries that have more money are going to want to do business with all of these countries. And if they're not using the U.S. dollar, guess what? They'll exchange their money. They'll use the BRICS. They'll continue to do business until we go to war and decide that there only can be one monetary system in the world to stop wars. That's just another reason to have a world war, to make everybody, all in the same boat. Nobody's different, but we're all different. Don't offend anybody, but everybody better act the same. And then I don't know about you, but all of the research, I'm not a doctor, I'm not nothing. I have no letters by my name, but my entire life, I was told by those people with those letters that I should take my vitamins, that I should have a lot of antioxidants. So,
ransom. Yeah, man, maybe we have to move the last hour over to, if you want to talk about this, we need to move over to just Rumble then.
Yeah, because You can't even talk about normal stuff. That's kind of like what I was talking about. When is it, that we'll get put off the air for saying, you know what, I don't think that eggs are as healthy as they say they are. This is kind of the topic. We could stay here. This is a perfect place. So I won't promote anything or anything like that. But this is just a mainstream article. This is not me. This is the authoritative sources, and they are telling me.
Which one is it? If you can read the news article and you can read the publisher and you can read the actual title with the date on it and state that, then you can use that.
Okay, so the article is called, Taking Dietary Supplements Full of Antioxidants Could Actually Help Cancerous Tumors Grow. And this is an article by Study Finds, published August 31st, 2023, and it is by Study Finds. They didn't put it's probably written by AI because there's no author. I'm looking, how when you used to read these things, you would say, well, who is this? I like this author. I like this article. It's very informative, and you'd look and you'd find their name, and then you'd start reading more of their stuff. They don't do that no more. Now it just says, by Study Finds, or is it by Chat GPT? I don't know. But anyway, so I'm not saying that, but in my opinion, not even in my opinion, just historically, this seems to be backwards from what they were telling me. So just like the egg thing, I don't know, next week it could be good for them. Next week it's bad for them. So you got to be careful there about who you listen to. But according to these same authoritative sources, we got to worry about us destroying the world. And evidently the seas are just not as blue as they used to be. They're turning colors on the earth. Now, we've talked a lot about the sun.
And that's a color in the spectral radiance change from the sun. Are you kidding me?
Exactly. So is it really that because of climate change and people doing all these bad things that the ocean's changing, or is it that the light refraction is changing off the water, or they're cherry picking and going out on gloomy days to look at the water and take the water? Or because this looks super blue to me right here, what they're showing this boat. And if you've ever gone out on a sunny day, almost anywhere, if the water's settled and it's not too choppy out there, the water is blue in most places, unless there's some kind of current that's bringing up sediment from the bottom, changing the color. I'm not talking about like the Hudson River or anything, but out in the ocean, the Baja, the Gulf of Mexico, these places, they seem to be pretty blue. But if it actually is fading and the hues are changing, is what this says, oceans turn to a new hue across parts of the earth. Could that possibly be related to us being in a different solar phase than at a different time? I'm asking you. I'm not a scientist.
Yes, I'm going to say yes. I mean, if you're looking for changes in the sun, they always say you'll see signs in the skies. So I don't know for you, signs in the skies, but if I see in my lifetime the sun go from yellow to white, that's kind of a sign in the sky, and you have to think all these other changes that are supposed to be coming in with these decreased magnetic fields, low solar activity for, the lowest we've seen in 400 years, in multi-centuries, if not thousands, plural of years. We're coming into this time. So you'd have to think that you would see something that might remind of the past, or stories from the past, legends from the past. If you're going to think about the actual light from the sun, the color of that being different, and what could be also is if there's so much more water vapor in the atmosphere from the Hunga Tonga eruption, that would also refract light in a different way to change the way the angle that it entered the water, so it will come out as a different color. So now put those two together. You have a more white-hued sun with 14% more moisture in the atmosphere. That's what the numbers have come up to. I read a couple new reports. They said 10%, but now a lot of the new ones are like up to 14% more moisture in the atmosphere. So think about trying to send a flashlight through a fog bank. It diffuses and refracts way differently than if you shoot that through a clear sky night and just you can get all the trees down in the orchard, or you can see way up to the chicken coops, whatever. It's the same thing. You put more moisture in there, you're going to reflect the light, and you're going to get a different output of what we visibly see as the human eye. So that would change the color. But I wanted to come back to your bricks thing a second, because we want to talk about oceans here. You mentioned Ethiopia, and you said, well, maybe nothing there. Yeah, no, there is something there. It's called the New Renaissance Dam. It's the largest hydroelectric dam in all of Africa. And subsequently, they're going to put a step down off the plateau highlands there of 3 more dams. And this will be the electrification point for all of Northern Africa, and what you see is like Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, even over into Chad. So this is where now the whole thing is starting. That was a Western project, a United Nations project, World Bank funded type of project. Now, I've been studying this for a while, and this was supposed to take 7 years to fill this dam, because it's over near Somalia, very dry. It's been really dry. Right, you know, Sally Struthers with the kids in Sudan and stuff, send $1 a day kind of thing. We're talking way back then, kind of dryness that in your mind is associated with that area. But somehow in their infinite wisdom, they saw one of the driest places on the planet. These planners of the World Bank loans for this project thought in their great infinite wisdom that one of the driest places on the planet, we should put a hydroelectric dam there. And by the way, it's going to take a better part of a decade, even if it does fill up, to fill up. But let's go build it anyway. Well, anyway, it only took 2 years to fill up. That's how much rainfall change is coming across Oman and Yemen, and that's why they're having lakes in the deserts in some of the areas of Saudi Arabia called the empty quarter. Now, Oman and Yemen are also becoming very much wetter. And if you go back further in time to about 800 AD, there was an area in what's now Yemen called the Marib Dam. And this thing was the biggest water body, dammed water body in all of the Middle East, some 800 years ago. And this is where the frankincense route went up Western Saudi Arabia into the Sinai Peninsula. Now that was all verdant grasslands and orchards and, you know, frankincense farms. You know, there are trees, so these frankincense orchards all up and down. That's how much water was there the year 800. And this Marib Dam apparently was between like 80 feet deep to 18 feet deep or something. And it went out as far as any of our largest dams today, but it was in the driest area of what we know today in Yemen. Like if you look at the boot, or if you look at Saudi Arabia and the whole peninsula there, comes down as the boot, closing the Red Sea almost. You'll see a mountain range that almost looks like a V at the boot, but that whole mountain range behind it was that big lake area that they filled up. So for me, at the minimum, what I would look for somebody who had ancient knowledge of cycles and money to, still in control of the money, still in control of banks that can say yes to projects with that same money that has been controlled for thousands and thousands of years, knowing the same cycle. I'm saying absolutely somebody with the knowledge knew that this area would become wetter and approved that project and actually designed it as the new area for electrical production to produce finished goods or take agriculture from where it is right now in Africa and bring it up to American standard. Because the number of dams that are stepping down is just, it's staggering how much power they're going to put out of here. So South Sudan also was another one to break away, to be able to control that system of rivers, to be able to put more hydroelectric, and also irrigate these areas down where the White and the Blue Nile converge. So that was the whole thing. If you look at further back maps into, let's say, 6,000 years ago, like the middle of this interglacial we're in, that was a mega lake itself, where the farthest reaches of that were at this mega lake, right where the White and the Blue Nile converge. And they were thinking that that might have been actually the filling point into the lake. So there are, again, who in their right mind would think about refilling an African mega lake from 6,000 years ago with modern rainfall from today in one of the driest places on the planet, install hydroelectric dams and plan to use the irrigation waters to spill out and refill parts of this mega lake? But not now. That was 20 years ago planning, when this really was one of the driest places on the planet. That caused massive famines across so many countries because they couldn't grow food at all. So dry. But they didn't pump the ground from under the water either, or under the ground, the water from under the ground. They should have. So 20 years later, fast forward now, we got the dam filling up 2 years. exponentially faster. We got the floods across Yemen, which used to be a dam area with the hugest frankincense, plantations. And then that area and plan to reflood out where the mega lake was and turn that into a huge, gigantic, unbelievably large grow zone in the Sudan to irrigate that with like our modern irrigation techniques in America or Europe or wherever it is, the apex of irrigation. They're planning to put that out right there. That's what I'm saying. This whole area is being converted into a brand new growing zone with the modern technology, all the economy shifting there. The BRICS are bringing in the investment. They're bringing in the export markets. They're bringing in the experts to be able to put this all together. And then they're also bringing in all the raw goods that'll be required, or even finished or semi-finished products that are going to be diverted away from the states and the G7 nations or the Western countries. It gets kind of interesting when you look at this, like this ancient history here, who knew these cycles to put this in play years and years in advance? And it's just happenstance, Ransom, boom. Ethiopia joins the BRICS as one of the first signatories too. Like that's 6 that they just added to bring it to BRICS 11. That's one of the first countries to join it. Why was that? Ethiopia, because they got the dam, they got the electricity. They're going to use that as a focal point to rebuild and electrify this part of North Africa. See how they know that you have to know the cycle though, Ransom. You got to know the cycle to make it happen. And look, they've already done it. They know the cycles.
And it looks like they're planning for a massive lake there. This GERD saddle dam to the south of the other Renaissance dam there. It's weird when you back up off the satellite. It looks like the crescent moon there. But think about how much, if you can see it, it's giant. Imagine how much water that's going to hold back. So all of this
area. They had to build
here,
walls in between that half moon thing you're seeing there. They actually had to build retaining walls because the water would have spilled through those 2 valleys. So to build a giant dam within the dam itself, just to stop the water from spilling over between the valleys, that's what that half moon thing is that you're looking at. It's several hundred feet tall. And
right.
see, the water would spill out and it would only get to a certain depth. But by adding that wall there to corral the water in that basin, they can get an extra 200 feet deep in that, what will be the reservoir, through the whole area there. Otherwise, it would spill over.
I was going to ask you, who did they get to help them build that? Was it a Chinese firm? Because
yes.
we know because the Chinese, and I was just thinking about that when you were talking about that, how the Chinese made these massive dams and would like flood out entire places where people lived, entire ecosystems that, like all of these people that complain about, oh, we're destroying the earth, but they don't ever say nothing. Like when one of these massive projects gets built and just drowns out a whole portion of the surface of the earth that had things in it that lived there, like including people. It's really tricky. So like if you look down this map, imagine if any problems happen, war breaks out, which, I'm not saying it happens a lot in this part of the world, but there's pirates and there's other things and there's all kinds of stuff. What happens to all the people that live down here? There, you see all these other people that are further down the river, down the Blue Nile River. Those people would be taken out. Not only that, this seems to be the only area where there's greenery. It's like, oh yeah, well, there's stuff growing there. We'll flood that out so we could have water. Look at it. Little patches of greenery. It's like the only patches of greenery for miles, especially towards the north right there. And you just get right into the Sudan desert. So they're going to power electricity to all of these people, which guess what? That means exactly that Western powers will have no control over the allegiance of these countries. They will be unwanted there. And we're already unwanted there from Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia. We've had many issues, especially with shipping, cargo, warlords, UN interference, trying to decide where the food goes, people fighting over food. So this is a whole new level of power that hasn't been seen in this area at all. Maybe since ancient times, like the ancient Kush people that lived up here in the Blue River, and then the Egyptians, of course, further north and on the lower Nile there.
Yeah, and the Aksum also, if you looked at AXUM, After the Romans collapsed in, say, around 500 AD, the Aksum kingdom, which was also responsible for the gold trade along with frankincense trade from about 600 AD to about 800 AD, they had the most pure coinage in weights and measure. So they took over from the Romans. So everybody was using the Aksum gold coins all up and down that frankincense route from Yemen through Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea coastline, all the way up to what you consider like the Sinai Peninsula / Turkey, Istanbul, or Egypt over in Cairo. That culture too, you know, so there's been a lot of different things in the past that have controlled that have had vast wealth, and you don't get vast wealth in a desert unless you're getting oil, you know.
That's the new that is the new oil is water, especially in places like this. And you know, and I'm not blaming anybody for anything or insinuating anything, but you know, over here in Libya, when the people that weren't friendly to the central bank started doing stuff like you know, giving people water and saying we accept gold and we're going to use gold, and maybe all of Africa could join in the gold. Some really bad things happen there. And you got to remember, whether you like Gaddafi or not, he had unified the people in Libya where there was no real racial attacks. And as soon as they knocked him out, things really changed. The demographics changed of who was in power. So you again have situations that, you know, a lot of people here in the United States on the social justice warrior end complain about happening 200 years ago here is actually happening over in some of these countries, but we're not going to talk about that. We don't need to talk about that because, you know, that's not part of the narrative right now. The narrative is let's build here. And it's funny. So if China's our enemy, you see they are well rooted in Southeast Asia. That's theirs. Let's go ahead and admit it. And India pretty much controls this whole area right here. With all of the people that live there and their resources. So if India decides to go along with the BRICS permanently, and that's how they're going to do things, that would mean that they were no longer ally. And then we're talking Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. You can see that the whole Eastern hemisphere is now changing hands. It's definitely changing hands, but not only that, you have a lot of these countries in South America. So we're getting cornered in with our neocon ran central banking system, which has decided that we're no longer worthy of, you know, having prosperity. So they're shutting down all of this, all of Europe, and it seems like they're just about ready to light a match to the whole thing. Send it down, send it down.
Getting down now. Yeah, man, one thing I wanted to add on that too, like who controls that river going down to Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Republic of Congo? Lake Victoria, like whoever controls that waterway can control all those countries south in there too. So think about the strategic point of owning that and controlling that water flow, because you know how Sudan and South Sudan had that war to break away from each other, but when you look at it, a predominant share of that of the White Nile is in the southern Sudan. So again, about the water rights and being able to divert the water into different areas for growing, and now you're so close to Ethiopia to get the electricity. And I do believe there were 8 or 9 more dams that were going to be put in this project also. Like Kusmi, I know was a big one. They were talking about putting one up there. Africa's about to change. You know, you might think the Africa that we knew, which they've always planted those pictures in your head of the, you know, just nothing. People cattle herding, Sally Struthers going through a village. There's some oil over in Egypt. There's some, you know, warlord fight over in the middle there. And that's kind of the images that they've set in your head. Everybody poor, nothing going on, no industrialization, No stability, no electricity, da, 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 da. Like that's the visual imagery that they put in people's heads. And you think my generation too, that's been kind of the messaging for years, decades, plural. You know, I've traveled through Africa a couple times, Southern Africa, and up in Egypt and Jordan and Turkey. It's different, but where the poor places are, they're extremely poor. With all this electricity coming and all the availability of water and irrigation, they're going to be able to grow a vast, huge, gigantic amount of food when a lot of the world's going to start being able to grow less food, especially more north climates like Canada, the more border of the United States with Canada. That whole area is going to produce way, way less. In northern China, way less. In southern Australia and southern part of South Africa, less. Even South America, less. So if you're going to take all this grain crop off that we feed our cattle with, like the corn and the soy, you're going to have to make that up somewhere. You can't have 8 or now 7.5 billion people and then grow enough food for 6 billion people each year and then think it's going to work. It's just not. So all these new food growing areas are being established now, right at this time. Again, I'm saying that somebody had to have known the cycle onset. And I find so many of these projects are like Go Time 2023, which is this year, which means they're active enough now where they can be built upon as the chaos is unveiling in other places across the planet. They can roll all these projects out here. So the new currency backed by gold, and now it'll be commodities in Ethiopia, Central African Republic, Kenya. They have a huge amount of resources in the ground there. Sudan, South Sudan, Chad. But now add into it where they can have water and electricity and bring the hygiene up. And then that, you know, if I was looking at a map of like the newest area where I think in Africa that's going to become the most wealthy of Africa to the U.S. standard of living in probably less than 30 years. Probably less, 20 years, would be that area right there that I see the drainage basin off of the new Renaissance Dam. You might laugh and go, are you kidding me? Ethiopia and South Sudan being wealthy nations? Oh my gosh. If they can control the water to the growing zones and have the electricity to process all the foods after you grow it, are you kidding me? And food being the #1 most expensive, valuable commodity on the planet at the time. So you don't think oil now. Think in the future, Ransom, you hit it, man. Water, and I think it's going to be food also. So look at the powerhouse of just, you know, knowing that they joined BRICS first, you know, adds a whole new, you know, thing into this now.
Yep, it's the God business: guns, oil, water, drugs. That's the way they've always ran everything, and they're using it to pull the plug and reset. And we can see the places on the map where they're trying to move to. And the same thing's happening, I believe, in lower Mexico, Central America, South America. They're doing the same thing. It's a reshuffling of who's going to be making the money, what resources are going to be coming out, who's going to get them. And, you know, I hate to say it, but the Western world is not only collapsing, it's shrinking in size as far as where we're you know, permitted to go, which people think we're friendly. Because, you know, even though you may not agree with the wars and the crazy things that our governments put out there, in other places in the world, they do blame you because they feel like, you know, you're voting it in. You're the one behind it. And, you know, a weird thing happened when I was living at the Air Force Base in Maryland. They do these weird, I'm going to call it a ceremony. Basically, what they do is they take an American flag and they take it on a sortie mission in some combat zone somewhere in the world, and they attach your name and your family to this, right? So they fly a flag over at the same time as they're dropping bombs, killing people. Now, you may agree for the reasons, whatever your case is. I'm not knocking veterans or anything like that. I'm talking about the powers that be somehow incorporated it. Like you should be proud that a plane flew over, dropped bombs on people in your name. Now, when you get into the metaphysical side of this or spiritual side of this, it's kind of like a ceremony where they attach you and your family to the actions that they're doing. So when those people show up, or you have problems with people, or countries don't like this particular country and the people in it, it's a thing called blowback, and it's a real thing. So they really are mad at you. They really do not like you. And if, all of these countries in Africa for decades have been dealing with the UN and, all of these NGOs backed by American and Western powers, there's a reason they don't really like us. So why not go to business with the people that don't have a track record of screwing you over? And that would be the Russians and the Chinese. Not saying that they're not going to do that in the future, but as of right now, they haven't done that to them. The Western world did. So you could see that blowback is going to cause a major economic shift in the reshuffling of nations.
Yeah, think about the food exports. It's like India has so much power by saying, well, we're only going to give rice to Mauritius, Singapore, and Bhutan. Everybody else on the planet, you still can't have it. See, the power of that, kind of unsurpassed. Now nations can tell other governments what to do because of the food that they give or withhold. It's DuByne right here, along with Ransom Godwin, signing off. Appreciate your time tonight. Share this and let some discussion about the world is moving to. Till next week. Radio.
Thank you for listening to
Keep it on air, and we'll talk to you then. Bye for now.
In July 2023, the floods in India killed thousands of people. It destroyed their home, and people struggled for food, water, and electricity for days. In early August 2023, a series of mysterious wildfires broke out in the U.S. state of Hawaii, predominantly on the island of Maui. The wind-driven fires prompted evacuations, caused widespread damage, and killed at least 115 people, leaving 850 others missing in the town of Lahaina. This is the perfect example of why we should prepare for emergencies, from having an emergency food survival kit to having extra blankets, batteries, flashlights, etc. Store flashlights of high-grade quality. Don't forget, a multi-tool kit and supplies for the pet, like a bowl for water and a toy for comfort. The first thing you should stock up on is water. During heavy storms, the water supply is disturbed, and going to the supermarket to buy water is out of the question. Clean drinking water is more essential than food. Therefore, you must ensure you stock up on water, at least 1 gallon per person for 3 days. Depending on the region your home is in, you can be subjected to heavy rains, landslides, wildfires, floods, a tornado, or even government and an unstable public. In any case, being prepared for the any scenario is necessary. You should stock up on the best food for emergency survival, safety kits, extra blankets, and more. Be informed. Also keep watching Mini Ice Age conversations to stay informed on the latest trends and dangers threatening our future and world. HeavensHarvest.com. Use the promo code ADAPT to save 15%. Stay prepared.